What have been some of the transportation issues in the last years?
Oh, one of the things is getting Carpinteria to be put on the train stop for Amtrak.
Ah, that's right.
That was a really big deal, because I know they were looking at bypassing Carpinteria at one time. So we were fortunate enough to get that as an alternative site.
And then there's the shuttle, and I would like to give credit to Dick Weinberg, who really worked hard to get that up and running in Carpinteria.
And he's still on the board of MTD.
And he's still on MTD board.
Chuck McCurry,
yes. Yeah.
Chuck McCurry, both those guys.
Yeah.
And we're lucky we've got the new director. Jerry is on there.
Oh yes.
So,
yeah. And it's, I think Carpinteria has done a good job also of expanding the bike paths and making the community walk friendly. And I recall that was one of the things when the downtown was redone and people expressed what they wanted. The number one thing was, do not turn us into Santa Barbara. We don't want to be Santa Barbara. Yeah. But we do want to be walkable and be able to go out on our main street and feel comfortable walking. And people do. I mean, you see them out on their bikes and walking over the bridges all the time. That's one advantage, I think, when we do get the new bridges on there, and there's some I'm not excited about, but people will be a little safer, especially sending their kids over the bridges both on their bikes and walking.
I'm not excited about all the signals. I mean, I remember Carp had no signals.
I am not excited about signals at all.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the rationale behind it, but there's just something about that big step.
Do you remember when the first signal came in?
Yes, I do.
I remember when the second one, because we were on the council when the one down there by
it was on 7th and Carp Ave by Alisa's school.
And I went home that night thinking, oh dear, we're putting in another signal. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Linden and Carp Ave. I remember that signal.
When did that one come in about? The one by Lisa?
Oh gosh, same thing.
Middle 90s, late 90s,
mid-90s. Yeah. And that was becoming very necessary though because of all the kids that were crossing there.
Because of the school they had to.
Yeah, it was really needed.
And Brad, what was the first signal put in?
Carp and Linden, Carp Ave and Linden. So.
And what was the reaction when that was put in, and why was it put in?
We're a big city now. We've got a signal. It was getting pretty. It was backing up pretty badly, and again, I was too young. I mean, I remember when I went in, but I was just a kid, so wasn't that. Signal.
You know what was sad is when they had to take out the Mills drugstore area because trucks turning there
and buses
kept taking out the signal. They were knocking it over, and there just wasn't enough room anymore for the big trucks to turn. So city finally had to acquire that little piece of property, and it's called Mills Corner in honor of Mills drugstore down there.
Planted there. That's right.
But it was to widen that intersection.
That's true.
Were you against freeway widening in one of the elections? Seems to me that.
Originally, yes. I was.
Yes, I think we'd have to say, because I was on that SPCAG board when that came up the first time around, early on. And the general feeling was that if people could be encouraged to use public transportation more, or that we wouldn't need the widening for X number of years, and let's put it off as long as possible. I'm not sure now that was the best decision. The feeling was, of course, the evidence of looking at other cities that were expanding their freeways was as soon as they were expanded, they were full.
Yeah.
And then they'd need to start thinking about expanding again. So.
And never catch up.
Yeah, people were saying, so what next? Are we going to get 8 lanes, and then 12 lanes, and when does that stop? And why not stop it now when it's at 2 lanes and 2 lanes? And that at the time convinced me because traffic wasn't that bad, but the projections were it was going to get worse, and it did. And I mean, it's done now, and we're going to have it. And I'm glad not to be on the council when those bridges come out.
It's going to be a lot of patience. And one of the things I was actually talking to our city engineer, Charlie Ebling, a couple days ago about it. is moving the Phase 3 line instead of ending right here in Carpinteria. We want to move it up to Padero Lane because there's really no reason for us to have Phase 3 end here where everybody funnels down to 2 lanes and then wait for the rest of the folks through Montecito and Summerlin to get on board and let their section go through. So we want to push it up to them. So it's, and I have
Push
to
it on
agree
north.
now, I mean, driving
Yeah.
back and forth with the HOV lane, I think that's a great idea. It does get people to start carpooling more. I remember, oh God, going up to Santa Barbara when they had the signals at State
yes.
Chapala.
Oh,
and
yes.
It was
We don't miss those.
crazy. We don't miss those.
Yeah.
So it was a good thing. But, you know, like you say, even today, look what's happening through LA. They just spent an ungodly amount, billions of dollars to do the 405 freeway, and it's already packed.
Yeah,
They're never going to catch up. Or you look at the 10 freeway
yeah.
going out in East LA, they'll never catch up. So we need to get those floating cars going.
How about some characters or gadflies you've seen in your time?
I would say characters on our city council. Some really good ones, you know?
Can you mention a couple?
I loved Ernie Wolbrandt. Ernie Wolbrandt, and you know, not a gadfly, but he was such a great person. I mean,
He was the last of the old politicians
He
in
really
Carpinteria.
was.
He was, yeah, he was.
I
He was a
remember-
classic.
I remember when I first got elected, and I have to say, I sat down and I had, I wore a collared shirt, but no tie and no jacket. And he turned to me and goes, you know, he goes, we wear ties and jackets to our city council meetings. I said, you know, Ernie, I appreciate that, but, you know, I'd like to think people elected me for what I said, not what I wore. And probably within 2 weeks, nobody was wearing a jacket and a tie after that. It was kind of the progression. Now for, you know, I mean, we carried through, but again, it's a different generational thing. But I think Ernie Wolbrandt will always be, I don't know if this sounds bad or not, but like the godfather figure, the guy who you always think of on the city council. He was always there.
He was a classic.
He was a classic. He was a people person. He came to me when the city first started looking at their general plan, came over to our house. I was probably 17 or 18. He said, I've got this general plan. You really should read this because it's going to affect your area here, and then tell me what you think. And I'm, really? Wow, who would ever be on the city council? I mean, come on. You know, kind of thing. But I was 18 then, and I started reading through it. It was interesting.
You know, and that reminds me of a funny story, if I could just pop that into it. When we got on the council, no one knew what to expect. I mean, this was 3 newbies coming on to replace people who'd been on there a long time.
Yeah.
And I know particularly staff was a little nervous about who we were, what we were going to do. And I recall right after getting elected, we went in, we were sitting around a table, and we were brought a stack that was probably that high, clunked down in front of each of us. And there was the general plan, the local coastal plan, the zoning ordinance, the, you know, everything you can think of.
Codes,
And it was here, this is what you need to know to be a city council person. And I went home and read all those things carefully, twice. And
the most confusing budget you ever read, which we immediately
yes, yeah. Oh, that's right, the budget, that document was in there. So I don't know what the expectations were, but I think the council came together and really did do a good job. I'm very proud of the time I spent on there, and it was hard work. It was it was 40 to 60 hours a week the first couple of years trying to figure out what was going on, get a hold of, you know, that machinery, and
the meetings went from
the meetings went on
5:30
till
to 11,
often well
12.
over midnight. Yes, I do recall that.
long meetings.
Yeah.
And then special hearings,
Yeah.
special meetings.
What about that one gadfly named Hillary?
Oh, Hillary.
Donna's favorite.
Hillary used to come in all these different hats.
Yeah. He was
Or a
entertaining.
different outfit or whatever. And then one night he started taking things off. And
Yeah, that
first it
was
was the hats,
kinda
but then
over
it
the
was his
top.
shirt, and then it was some more stuff. And we didn't know quite how to stop him. And the TV, of course, was going, so we had to stop that. Well, we just all got up off the dais and left. And that shut the TV down, so.
Which just brought me to another idea, and I almost forgot it, and I'm glad you just mentioned that. Yeah, Hillary was funny, but all city council meetings, the three of us were the first to start televising city council meetings, Mike, Donna, and myself, because that was always part of the problem. Like as a building contractor, I'd show up at the lumberyard and forget Tuesdays. I mean, you'd sit there for 2 hours talking to everybody about what happened at the council meeting and trying to correct the rumor mill kind of thing. And so we started televising the meetings, which I think involved a lot more people in the community. All of a sudden, they're not depending on I won't tell you the nickname we had for the Carpinteria Herald, but that paper, because they had a slant on everything. And then the rumor mill that was flying. So all of a sudden you're able to watch our council meeting live and see, oh, wait a minute. We may not agree with what they're doing on the council, but you're wrong. This is what they were working on, or this is how they approached it.
It also brought people in, and I can
Yes.
remember I can't remember if it was a man or a woman, to tell you the truth, but one person who came in one night with bedroom slippers on,
Oh,
came
yeah.
running in the back door because they'd been sitting at home watching and they wanted to come down and say something about that issue.
Yeah, they still do.
And they
People
just jumped
still
in the
do.
car and came over. It was wonderful.
People
Loved
still
it.
do that. They still drive right over, takes 2 minutes to get
Yeah.
there and come in, which is great. Hey, I'm sitting home and it just hit me. And I think that's, again, kind of indicative to our community. People want to be involved here, and if they see what's going on, they come in and have a say.
Yeah.
And, nobody's, because I remember the early days before we were elected, we were just told flat out, thank you, next, thank you, next. And you didn't feel like you were being heard. And I would like to, I feel proud that I think we changed that. We let a lot of people in and opened the books to everybody. We also opened City Hall earlier. Used to be like a 10 to 5 or 10 to 3. And then we started opening 8 to 5, so you had full working hours. Information we started giving to the library. So people that didn't come to City Hall, they can go to the library and check out whatever we have there and read through it.
Now they go online.
No,
Things have
online.
changed.
If you know how to go online, you can go do that.
Yeah, they have.
It's just accessibility, and right now it's so funny. Everyone talks about transparency. We were doing that in 1990. Early 90s, the transparency aspect. Now it seems to be the buzzword. So I wish more government was like that. So
Well, make people feel comfortable, and they'll come in and take part.
true.
That's
True.
what you want.
Are there any last comments you'd like to say about the big news stories of the last 50 years?
I mean, what they were?
What they were? Anything else come to mind that we didn't touch on?
State
Well,
park.
the election in 1990, there was
Oh,
a change
that was a
for
very big
Carpinteria.
change.
It was.
Actually, it was a direction.
Yeah.
But we did mention that.
Yes,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
although we haven't mentioned, and then of course the J election.
Measure J, Measure M. What was the last one there? No, Measure J, Measure M. State parks continuing to be a challenge for the city.
Well, tell me about that. How have they been a challenge?
Well, it's funny, and I want to say it was Paul Maranchella was the city manager at that time. Again, you talk about how to spend taxpayer dollars wisely. To buy land and build more park space is very, very expensive. Also, development impact fees. That's another thing that we instituted that were kind of given away in the early days here of development to try, and that's one of the reasons that Oxnard went in the hole so
Yes.
bad. They would just waive all kinds of fees for developers, and it put them behind the 8 ball or in the hole. And we didn't see it that way. If you came to Carpinteria and we're going to develop something, you know, we weren't anti-building, but you're going to pay your way, and you know, instead of making humongous profits, you're not going to impact the citizens of Carpinteria.
They have to pay to offset.
Impacts that they create through whether it's schools, and that was another issue, whether it was schools, whether it's water, whether it's streets, infrastructure, fire, police, everything gets covered. But what I was saying about the state park, their Linden Field was a great idea there. It was like their backyard. So if folks remember in the early 90s, how the grass was all dead and it was just like gopher city. We went and took it over and cut a deal with the state park. Well, we're going to collect parking fees in your state park to offset. We will pay to put in irrigation systems and maintain it, because your backyard is actually our front yard down to the beach. And so we did that, and then we were able to use that park and provide it to the community at a better level of service. So
When was that approximately?
I would say early 90s, mid 90s.
And was it
It was under Paul, so it must have been those first
Yeah.
4 years or
Was it a
so.
deal between the city and the state park?
Yes, it was a deal between the city and the state park. Now that has recently changed, so we're going to see how the state park is now taking it back over. So we'll see.
Oh, they're taking it back
Yes.
through a mutual agreement? Or not?
I would like to think, well, less said is better, Larry. I'm going to let time tell, but they decided they were ready to take it back. So we're going to keep a close eye on it, let me put it that way.
It did lead to cooperation that helped create Tomo Park, is that right?
Yes, it did, and which again, there's a collaborative effort between the city, Morning Rotary Club did all the legwork. They were the heavy lifters, and the state park. So those three agencies worked well together. The city is still going to help maintain that along with the Morning Rotary, that aspect of the park. But the state is going to take the big Linden Field, and we'll see.
Well, any other comments? And yes?
Been enjoyable.
Yes, it has, and thank you for all your service. Archives. What is it? Turn around, come on down.
It's not then.
No, it is. One of the greatest things you brought to the city, and I think the single most thing I've heard so positive, touring with the candidates. All of a sudden, you really brought out what was the best in every candidate, and to show really, people got a lot of feeling for the person they were going to vote for.
Yeah, it helped a lot.
It did help a lot. They understood and they saw it. So thank you for that, Larry. I mean, that was phenomenal. Along with all the other, I mean, you just, again, do so many things, filming so many things.
Well, a big thank you to both of you. Great interview.
Yes.
Oh,
And
thank
thanks for
you.
your public service. And say goodbye.
And keep up the good work.
Bye. She's coming out of retirement now, so I can go. And this is for Larry.
There we go.
Popcorn.
Oh, wow, now we
Larry
can
and Donna.
have some